TSMC is one of the most powerful companies on Earth because it sits at the center of modern technology. If you use an iPhone, train an AI model, buy a car with advanced driver systems, or run cloud infrastructure, there is a good chance TSMC is somewhere inside that chain. What makes TSMC so special is not just that it makes chips. It makes the best chips at scale with extraordinary yield, precision, and reliability. That combination is incredibly hard to copy. In semiconductors, being a little better is not enough. You need years of process know-how, huge capital spending, world-class engineers, and a customer ecosystem that keeps reinforcing the lead. This is why TSMC has become so dominant. Foundry manufacturing is a business where trust matters. NVIDIA, Apple, AMD, Qualcomm, and many others need a partner that can deliver cutting-edge chips on time, at volume, with high yields. TSMC has built a manufacturing machine that the rest of the world depends on. It is not just a chip company, it is the industrial backbone of the AI era. But there is a catch. TSMC's greatest strength is also its biggest vulnerability. It is concentrated in Taiwan. That creates geopolitical risk that no balance sheet can fully remove. If tensions across the Taiwan Strait rise, the whole company becomes exposed to scenarios that are not normal business risks. Sanctions, shipping disruption, military conflict, customer panic, supply chain shock, or forced restructuring of global chip flows. That is the risk Buffett saw. Buffett did not appear to doubt TSMC's technology, management, or profitability. In fact, he praised it as a very well-run company. But Buffett is not only buying quality, he is buying predictability. And if the location of the asset can turn a great business into an uninvestable one overnight, then the margin of safety disappears. In other words, Buffett likely saw this. TSMC was a fantastic company, but not necessarily a fantastic Berkshire-style investment at that moment. He prefers businesses where the future can be estimated with more confidence. When geopolitical risk becomes too large, even a world-class business can fail his test. So the real lesson is this. TSMC is powerful because it is essential, irreplaceable, and deeply embedded in global technology. Buffett sold because he was not betting against the company, he was betting against the location risk. If you want to say it in one sentence, use this. TSMC is one of the strongest businesses in the world, but Buffett sold because he was buying earnings, and he saw geopolitical uncertainty turning those earnings into a risk he could not price confidently. TSMC shows that in investing, being the best company does not always mean being the safest stock. The US needs TSMC's leading-edge chips, but it also wants to reduce dependence on a single Taiwanese supplier, while China sees Taiwan's chip industry as tied to both economic leverage and the broader Taiwan issue. The result is that TSMC is simultaneously a critical partner, a national security concern, and a geopolitical bargaining chip. The relationship is basically a three-way strategic tension. The US relies heavily on TSMC for the most advanced chips used in AI, smartphones, defense systems, and cloud infrastructure, and even US efforts to reshore production still leave America dependent on Taiwan for years. TSMC's Arizona expansion is meant to reduce that concentration risk and support US supply chain security. In simple terms, the US wants access to TSMC's capability because it is so advanced that replacing it quickly is not realistic. Why the US wants less dependence. At the same time, Washington does not want one foreign geography to hold too much of the world's most important chip capacity. That is why US policy has pushed for more domestic fabrication, packaging, and supply chain resilience, even if the near-term cost is higher and efficiency is lower. So the US position is not, we don't need TSMC. It is, we need TSMC, but we want to de-risk that need. Why China matters here, for China, Taiwan is not just a trade issue. It is part of a larger sovereignty and security dispute, and semiconductors sit inside that conflict. Because advanced chips are so strategically important, semiconductor policy has become a tool in the US-China tech rivalry, with export controls, supply chain restrictions, and investment shifts all reflecting that competition. That makes TSMC more than a company. It is an asset whose location has strategic meaning. The paradox is that the more the US succeeds in building TSMC capacity outside Taiwan, the more it reduces its own vulnerability, but also potentially lowers Taiwan's leverage over US security interests. Yet, if the US depends too much on Taiwan, it remains exposed to a supply shock if tensions rise. So both sides are trying to balance security, economics, and deterrence at the same time, which is why TSMC sits at the center of the whole relationship. You could say it like this: the US needs TSMC because it powers the most advanced chips in the world, but it also wants to diversify away from TSMC because relying too much on one company in one geopolitical hotspot is a strategic risk. Buffett's worst fear was not that TSMC was a bad business. It was that a serious Taiwan crisis could make the business impossible to value or even operate normally. The most extreme downside he likely worried about was a military escalation, blockade, or invasion that could shut down Taiwan's advanced chip production and trigger a global supply chain shock. The feared outcome. The clearest worst case is that TSMC's fabs in Taiwan become inaccessible or destroyed in a conflict because TSMC concentrates the world's leading-edge chip production on the island. That would hit TSMC itself, but it would also damage Apple, Nvidia, AMD, and the broader global tech system that depends on those chips. In that scenario, Buffett would not just face a stock decline, he could face a permanent loss of capital with no reliable way to estimate recovery. Why that mattered to Buffett? Buffett has said geopolitical tensions were a factor in the sale, and he appears to have preferred capital deployed in Japan rather than Taiwan because of that risk. For him, the problem was not volatility alone. It was the possibility that a great company in a bad location could turn into an uninvestable asset overnight. That breaks the kind of predictability he usually demands. In one sentence, the worst consequence Buffett feared was a Taiwan conflict or blockade that could stop TSMC's production, wreck the global chip supply chain, and turn a world-class business into a capital trap.